Good afternoon, Karen.
Good afternoon, David. It's good to be here today.
You got a big smile on your face.
I
How
love
come?
doing these videos.
Oh,
They're
that's
just,
good.
it's really fun to be able to share what we have to offer in a new way. And it's always really nice to be able to share and articulate what I'm learning in my own
Mm.
marriage and hope that that's going to help other women out there who have struggled just like I've struggled and can still struggle
Yeah,
sometimes.
that's
Yeah, of
great. Thank you. It's a
course.
pleasure doing this with you. So, my name is David Cope, and I'm a founder of a new life center with my partner Peggy. And I got involved in relationships after I got a divorce in the year 2000. And I knew that I didn't want to be on my deathbed, wishing that I had a loving and intimate relationship. So I really focused and committed to myself to learn what it takes to have a loving, intimate relationship with another person. And I started reading books after my divorce and try to understand what makes a happy marriage. But it was all the same things that I had been trying that never worked. And what I found out is that in order to have an intimate and loving relationship, it has to start with me. That I had to have the relationship with myself. So the last 15 years, I've been learning and teaching others how to have a healthy relationship with myself, and I'm able to take that into my relationship with my partner Peggy, and we're training. Karen's been trained in our program, and we're teaching other women how to change their marriage almost overnight. And so, Karen, can you kind of share about who you are, and how you got such a big smiley face?
I can. So I came into a New Life Centers program about 4 years ago, and I was really struggling in my marriage. I really had no idea at all what a
Mm,
healthy relationship was or what a marriage even was. And I certainly didn't know what it meant to have a healthy relationship with myself. That
mhm,
had been something that I struggled with my whole life and knew that. And one of the problems was I was constantly looking to a man to make me happy and having a relationship with a man almost as a substitute for a relationship with myself
Beautiful.
because
Yeah.
I was so lost on that. And
Mhm.
this work has completely changed my life. It's changed my relationship with myself. I actually have one and know what that means. And I have a wonderful marriage that I'm so happy to be in and feel very engaged and like I know what I'm doing for the
Yeah.
first time.
Yeah. It's like
And
you finally know that there's a manual
yes,
how to have a happy marriage and what steps you need to do to create one. It
it's
doesn't have to
it,
be a mystery anymore.
yeah, it's so it's like I can sleep at night. It's very peaceful knowing
Yeah.
I have that manual and it always works. And it worked very quickly as I started to apply these concepts and work on myself and take my walls down. My marriage began to change, like David said, almost overnight.
Mm.
And I saw my husband open back up to me because I pushed him away so much that he was really distant. And as I began to do that for myself and let him back in, he followed my lead and he began to step up too. And that's what I get to teach other women how to do every single day. And it continues to blow my mind when my
Mm.
clients come in and share all the amazing things they're experiencing and how they're turning their marriages around. And I didn't believe you that this would
Yeah.
work, and it's working, and I feel so good. It's my favorite part of every day that I
Mm.
come to work. So
Thank you.
that's that's why I'm here doing this.
Can you share our fundamental principles of our Facebook group and
I,
our relationship course?
I can. So the three principles, which if you've been paying attention and in the group for a little bit and watching the videos, these are really important um, to start to begin to see things from a new perspective. That's really what we're here to do, is to share a whole new way to look at relationships and look at marriage. And the first principle is that you are responsible for your happiness. We fall into this illusion thinking that other people and other things, or our husbands, or even being married, is going to be the thing that will make us happy. And it can't, because happiness is actually an inside job. And we have to look within ourselves and do the work on ourselves to find our happiness within. And then we get to bring that into our marriage. And the second principle is you are the only person that you can change. And I think all of us know that at some level, that we don't have any control over anybody else. We can't change anyone else, and no one else can change us for us. But when we can know that we have the power to change ourselves and the problems we have, that's incredibly empowering, and it puts you in the driver's seat of your experience, of your marriage, and of your life, and of yourself. And the third principle is that authentic intimacy is actually about having a relationship with yourself and feeling good about who you are. And so when we do that work to uncover the ways we feel bad about ourselves and shine the light on that and actually let it go, it's counterintuitive, but what happens is we begin to feel good about ourselves, and then we begin to know who we are and have that relationship. And then we get to bring that into our marriage. And that's where intimacy begins with your spouse or with your partner, is actually showing up as you with your walls down, ready to be vulnerable and let your partner in because you've let yourself in.
Well, thank you, Karen. Good job.
Of course.
So today, the title of our broadcast is Why Putting Your Husband First Will Destroy Your Marriage. And what we're trying to do is help our listeners understand that what we're offering at A New Life Center in our relationship course is very different than anything else is out there. And we want to try to help you see some of the things that you might be reading or looking at as ways to help you in your marriage, but help you understand why those things probably aren't going to be working in your marriage, and to understand why. And in the why, you can begin to say, okay, now I need to try something that makes sense, that why it would work. And we want to try to present that to you so you can see it, have a different perspective on what actually makes a happy marriage, and how to change it at a fundamental level, and not just surface things that are maybe temporary or short-term solutions. Karen, can you read what you found out on the internet? And you did a little research on what is out there about this topic of that as women in a relationship, they need to put their husbands first. Can you share some of the things that you found that's out there and quite prevalent?
Of course. I just did some quick Google searches about the idea of putting your partner or putting your spouse first, and it's everywhere. And I think this mindset is what many of us have learned, and what we see in society and what we believe about relationships. And I know from firsthand experience, and so do my clients, it doesn't work. But this is what's out there that we really believe, and fall into that trap of thinking that this is the way to have a happy, healthy marriage. So one of the article titles I saw in my research was, "Your love will never work if you can't put your partner before yourself." And in the article, there was a sentence, "You need to put yourself second." And then another article was, "A happy couple always puts each other first." Another, "A husband must make his wife his first priority to have a lasting, healthy marriage."
Yep.
And I think that's a lot of our fantasies of what we want or wish would happen. Then another title was, "Why You'll Be Happy Putting Your Partner First." And then the last one I found that I wrote down was, "Happy Spouse, Happy House." That was kind of a tongue twister. So happy spouse, happy house, putting each other first.
Yeah.
So it's out there, and it's really prevalent.
Yes.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, what we're trying to help you see is why that if you do that, it might be a short-term solution, but not a long-term, lasting solution for having a happy and healthy marriage. And the reason is that most women in marriages understand at some level that they're unhappy inside and that they have a facade that they've created to the outside world, that they're put together and their life is good, and they go about their life managing that facade in the outside world, but knowing that deep inside they're very unhappy. And that's what we found at a New Life Center, doing the research and study that helps us understand why we have an unhappy life, our unhappy marriages, is because fundamentally we are unhappy and we project onto our marriage, onto our life, onto our husbands, that they are the source of our unhappiness. We talk quite a bit about being a victim and blaming our husband. So the moment you blame your husband for the reason why you're unhappy, and if you are blaming your husband for why you're unhappy, what that means is that fundamentally internally, you are unhappy within yourself, but you're unable to recognize it because you want to believe that it's somebody else is the source of your unhappiness. So when you begin to understand that you are unhappy at a very fundamental level, then if you do some of these things like putting your husband first and you're unhappy inside, it's not going to change your unhappiness by putting your husband first. What actually happens in a marriage over a longer term period, you build resentment because you're doing it from a place of being unhappy, trying to make somebody else happy, put them first. You actually build resentment towards your partner because you're having to put your partner first and you feel like there's nothing left inside of you. Can you share a little bit about that, Karen, and how you felt when you tried to put your husband first, and some of the women you work with, how do they feel when they're trying to put their husband first?
I can. And I just want to piggyback on something, David, that you were talking about. It was very hard for me to hear that I was fundamentally unhappy. The reason that we are isn't because there's something wrong with us or something bad. It's because of how our mind works. So as humans, we all have a mind, and the very nature of the mind is that it is a void and emptiness. And how we work in that humanness is to how we work in our humanness to fill that void so we don't have to experience it, is we look outside for things and people for attachment or to attachments to give us meaning and purpose to try to make us happy, never dealing with that fundamental void and emptiness that we have internally. And that's why we're unhappy. And the only way to get happy is to fill that void and emptiness with ourselves. And so in a
Can I
marriage,
interrupt for you just for a second? I think often people get confused when we say you're fundamentally unhappy, and they say, well, I have lots of happy moments. I'm only unhappy some of the time. And how do you reconcile people who say, well, I'm not, all of me isn't unhappy. There's just parts of me unhappy. And when we come into the program, it's a very common thing for somebody to say, well, it's just a part of me. There's other parts of me that I'm happy, but just like not in my marriage, I'm not happy.
Yeah, that can be a really confusing concept. And I know that it was for me as well, because I had really fooled myself into thinking that I was happy using different areas of my life. And how we explain it is that if there's a part of you that is unhappy, then that has to mean that all of you is unhappy because you're incomplete. If that one part of you is unhappy, we have to look at it as a whole in order to own it, to be able to let it go. And David, we often use the example of AA, that if someone has a drinking problem on the weekend and they go to AA, They don't say, hi, my name is Judy. I'm an alcoholic on the weekends. It's, hi, my name is Judy. I'm an alcoholic, period.
Mm.
And it's the same thing when we have to see that we're unhappy. As long as I want to say, well, I'm happy over here, but unhappy over here, I'm never going to resolve that. And I have to be able to see if one part of my life I'm unhappy, it's showing me that I'm unhappy as a
Mm.
whole. That's,
Especially in a marriage, and I think most women that we worked with over the years really realize that they are unhappy in their marriage, but they don't realize that it's them that is unhappy. They think it's the marriage or their husband that's making it. And what we're trying to distinguish is if you were happy inside, you would have a happy marriage because you would be looking to create and validate your happiness by either choosing a man or treating a man in such a way that would support your happiness. When you are unhappy in your marriage, it's because you are unhappy within yourself. And what the mind does, it tries to validate your own unhappiness by looking to prove to yourself that your unhappiness is coming from somebody or something outside of you. And sometimes it's easier to understand from that perspective is that if you were a happy person, you wouldn't be unhappy in your marriage. It's not possible. But your unhappiness comes from your own internal unhappiness that you haven't yet come to recognize as the source of your unhappiness is you. And that's kind of why we say that if you put your husband first, is actually going to make yourself worse because you're unhappy inside. So the solution to the problem has to be, how do you make yourself happy? So then your marriage can turn into a reflection of your inner world, which is your happiness. What are some of the challenges that women have in that the question I asked you before that I got
yeah,
done
sure.
talking? Sorry.
Yeah. But so I think, David, it was around understanding why, when we put our husband first, what our experience of ourselves is like in
And
that.
resentment, why that builds resentment.
Yeah.
And when we do it for our husbands to put them first, why does that build resentment? And what have you found out? Thank you, Karen.
Of course. So what I have found out, just in working on myself and working with other women, is that when we put our husbands first, we give and we give and we
Mm.
give, and either secretly, or for me, not so secretly, we're expecting then our husbands to then do the things for us
That's
that are
right.
going to make us happy.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't even know what those things are. We just know that they need to be doing it, and we see that they're not. And so we become resentful for all the things that we're giving and all the things that we're doing
Yeah.
to put our husband first. And so we remain feeling empty on the inside, and like we have nothing left to give. So we become bitter, and I'm sick and tired of taking care of everybody else. When is somebody going to take care of me?
Yeah.
I never get my needs put first. I don't feel like a priority. And so, like David said, that unhappiness internally just gets worse and worse and worse. And our game plan of thinking putting our husbands first is going to solve that just blows up in our face, essentially.
And to support what you're saying, Karen, is if you aren't happy inside and you expect your husband to respond to you and do things that you think he should be doing to make you happy, the problem is that nobody can make you happy if you're unhappy inside. I know we all get that at some intellectual level, but we have a really hard time converting it into our marriages and thinking that somehow our husbands are responsible for why we are unhappy or responsible to do the things that to make us happy. But if we're unhappy inside, nothing your husband can do over any long term is going to make you feel happy because you have because if you are unhappy inside, nobody can make you happy. That's the first principle in our relationship course is that nobody can make you happy. And if you begin to realize that you're unhappy, in which most women realize, I'm unhappy in my marriage, and realize, no, it's me that's unhappy, and that the things that my husband do, no matter what he does, will never make me happy, that the place that we have to start in order to have a happy marriage is with ourselves. So in this case, our audience is women, and that means that the women who feel unhappy in their marriage is actually coming from a place within themselves that is unhappy. And in order to change your marriage almost overnight is to work on becoming happy inside. And then it's almost like magic. If you can imagine, if a woman is unhappy, and in our case, she's with a good man, then as she changes to become happy, what happens is she begins to drop her walls, which she uses to protect herself from being hurt and to protect herself from being vulnerable. And in the process of becoming happy, her heart is opened, her walls are dropping, and not only does she feel good about herself, but her husband quickly responds to the walls dropping, which we learned in the video with our good man Adam.
Mm-hmm.
So the emphasis here is to try to understand that if you work on putting your husband first, you're going to resent it because you don't feel good in yourself, and there isn't anything in you that makes you feel good about doing it for your husband because you feel empty and unhappy in yourself. When you become happy within yourself, you have an abundance to give to others because you're replenishing yourself, and then you can give to your husband without making you feel resentment. That's where resentment comes from. So Karen, can you talk a little bit about how we teach women to be happy? I mean, we actually have it's taken almost 10 years to really hone it down, but we actually have in the relationship course how to teach women how to be happy. And we have a structured program that actually works to do that. It's quite
We do.
amazing.
It really is. And the great thing and what drew me to this work so much from the very beginning is how quickly it works. Our program is only an 8-week program, which is phenomenal. I spent plenty of years in talk therapy and traditional counseling and other types of healing and coaching modalities. And it was always this never ending, open ended process where I never really saw any results. It was like I kept hitting the same wall and the same patterns and the same things in myself over and over and over again. And when I found this work, it actually really worked because all I had to do was work on myself. And when I do that, it's permanent.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. It's hard work because we have to face those things that we've been hiding from, that we haven't wanted to see because they expose us and push us to change. But to be able to drop your walls and soften those edges and get to know who you are and feel good about yourself, like really good about yourself, not pretending to, it not being fleeting and up and down, but to have a foundation of knowing yourself and feeling that good and being able to do that in 8 weeks, to me, continues to, it's phenomenal. Yeah. So
and that's what makes our program different than everybody else's, because we've actually developed a program that teaches people in men and women how to build a relationship with themselves. And in that's what, when you have a relationship with yourself, you feel happy inside. Happy isn't like happy.
It's not feeling blissed out all the time, which is
no. What happy is, a synonym for happy is a sense of contentment and a sense of feeling at peace within yourself. It's another. It could be also being authentic or being true to yourself. Because what happens when in our marriages, we lose ourselves. because we're not defined as who we are. We get together with our, in this case, with women get together with their husbands. They lose their sense of self, and that's why they wake up one day and say, "I don't know who I am. I've lost my sense of who I am." And when you feel that way, what our program does is it helps you reconnect with yourself, so you
Mhm.
feel good about yourself, and you can take that back into your marriage.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is actually the opposite of putting your husband first. It's putting yourself first. And at first, people say, "Well, that's pretty selfish if I'm putting myself first." But it's we hear often you get in on a plane and they say, make sure when if you the airbag air what do you think you
Oxygen.
put the oxygen
Oxygen mask.
yeah, it comes down. Put it on your face first before your children, so you can help them.
Yeah.
It in order to have a healthy relationship, you have to be spending time with yourself, developing a relationship with yourself, which makes you feel good about yourself. It's the opposite. And when you start putting yourself first, you start feeling good about yourself. Excuse me.
Hmm.
When you start feeling good about yourself, you have lots of energy within yourself to give to others. When you feel unhappy, you feel depleted and you feel like there's nothing that you have in there, and you feel like your husband is always draining you, or you feel tired, or you have nothing left to give because you've given it all. But when you feel more complete within yourself, you have a capacity to refill yourself, not looking to your husband to fill you up, to make you happy, to provide the things in your life that add the excitement and the interest that you thought your marriage should be. You actually do that for yourself, and then you take that fullness and completeness within yourself into your marriage, and you no longer are needy or codependent on your husband for him to be the source of your happiness. When I feel good when my husband is connecting to me. I feel bad when he's not. Well, that's a sense of codependence, meaning how I feel about myself is dependent upon how somebody else is treating me. When you build happiness within yourself, you don't need somebody to provide that for you because you're providing it for yourself. And then you have a foundation for a healthy relationship and a healthy marriage. And we get so confused, you know, I need my husband to know my needs and be attuned to me emotionally. Well, no, in this model at a new life center, you need to be emotionally attuned to yourself.
Yeah.
And when you're emotionally attuned to yourself and your needs, which is what you learn when you put yourself first, and you don't need your husband to do that for you, or when your husband doesn't do it, you no longer feel bad about yourself because you're providing those things that you wanted your husband to provide. You provide it within yourself, and it makes a much more balanced and healthy relationship, which you're not dependent upon your partner and what he does and doesn't do as how you feel about yourself, that you're providing that for yourself within yourself because you value and care about yourself and want to do that so that you can feel good and bring it to your marriage and to your children, and it just spills out into your relationships with other people.
Yeah. And it's such a relief because all we have to do is then focus on ourselves and get
Yeah.
to know ourselves. And what I notice in my marriage and what my clients reflect back to me and their experiences can kind of relax in your
Yeah.
relationship and really accept your husband for who he is. There's no longer this constant pull of wanting to control him or change him. You can really begin to
Mhm.
see him for who he is for the first time, because through this process you get to see who you are
Yeah.
for the first time and really get to know you. And when David was talking about being emotionally attuned to yourself, when we slow down and think about it, it really is kind of absurd to think that someone else should be emotionally in tune to us when we're not even that for ourselves, that we have to be ourselves, be that for ourselves
Yeah.
first, and understand and know who we are
Yeah.
first. And then we can share that and bring it into our relationship.
And that actually is what intimacy is.
Yeah.
It's a shared when we take our own connection with ourselves and bring it into the relationship. When we're depending on somebody else to provide intimacy in our marriage, that means that we don't have it within ourselves. But if you develop it, intimacy within yourself, by building a relationship with yourself, providing and being the source of your own happiness, then you're not dependent on your husband to do the things and not do the things that makes you feel like there's intimacy or connection. We learn in over the years that women's sense of intimacy is different than a man's. Their sense of intimacy, what we learned, is more communication and talking and being there and kind of having your back and being able to share your difficult moments, and more so, and having some type of connection, more of emotional. Whereas men, intimacy comes from more of a place of physicalness. So it's almost, because men and women are so different, it's hard to think that men create intimacy one way and women create intimacy another way, and that somehow they're supposed to come together with their different ways of and and make that work, when it's much more logical to say, no, I have to provide my own intimacy with myself by building a relationship with myself, and I can bring that to my partner rather than having him be dependent upon my feeling. A lack of intimacy comes from not having a relationship with myself and providing that for myself. And our relationship course builds that process of creating intimacy within yourself, which means I have a sense of contentment. I know who I am. I'm filling myself up inside, and I feel better about myself. I bring that into my marriage and my relationship. So, Karen, can you kind of wrap up for today? And
Sure, I can. So today we were talking about why putting your husband first will destroy your marriage. And very simply put, what we talked about today was when we're already unhappy on the inside, and if you're unhappy in your marriage is reflecting that back to you, that you feel unhappy on the inside.
mm-hmm.
And we get lost in this myth thinking that if we do all the things for our husband and we put him first, that somehow he's gonna then do those things for us and make us happy. And it can't work that way, because if I'm unhappy on the inside, I have to do the work first to make myself happy,
Mm-hmm.
by putting myself first and doing what I need to do for me to be happy, so that I can show up fully in my relationship and share who I am fully, because I know who I am and I feel good about myself. And then because I've been doing what I need to do for me and putting myself first, I then have all the energy to be there in my relationship. I don't feel drained when I do something for my husband. I feel good doing that because I already feel good about myself, and it takes no effort at all. And so when we do that, then that's where real intimacy comes from, because we're showing up as who we are, fully engaged, already filling our own cup to be happy. And then we can share that with our husband, and they start to then, if we've had our walls up and we can show up in that way, then they start to re-engage and open back up because they feel safe. And it's like magic overnight. They begin to change along with us, but we have to go first by putting ourselves first. Yeah.
I know a lot of people struggle with that, Karen. Why?
It can seem so daunting, like it's so much responsibility.
Why can't the men go first?
Yeah, and it's
What's the framework? Can you just repeat the framework again? That this only works under certain circumstances and specific types of marriages?
This
And
is everything we're teaching is meant for a um, narrow framework, and that if you're a woman with your walls up and you have walls around your heart, then and you're with a good man, when you take those walls down and you're with a good man, he feels that and begins to re-engage, and all those problems that you're having in your marriage go away because he begins to step up too, because you've stepped up. And we don't want to know that, because it seems like so much responsibility, and why do I have to do all the work, and this is unfair, why is the woman always the problem? Not saying that good men don't have issues and challenges. Of course they do. None of us are perfect. But what we've found in our research and what I've experienced in my own marriage and what I teach other women to do is it's so much easier for the woman to step in and take her walls down and begin to show up in the relationship really for almost the first time fully as who she is. And men are so simple in a really good way. Good men are simple. It doesn't take much. And let's be honest, ladies, we're pretty complicated and make things very complicated. And we want our men to figure us out. And that is an impossible expectation to put on them. And it took me a really long time to accept that and understand it and know it and experience it. But I'm living it every single day, and it works. I often say it takes breadcrumbs. It takes a genuine, big, heartfelt hug to my husband and just saying, thank you for working so hard. And he melts, like Peggy says. And then he what can I do for you? He wants to go get the stars and moon for me. But when I had my walls up and was pushing him away, he withdrew too, because I was making him feel wrong and making him feel bad about himself, because that's how I felt about me. So when I began to shift that and change that, and he experienced that change with me, then our whole relationship shifted. And that's really what we're teaching. This is empowering. It's not meant to beat yourself up or, it's all the woman's fault. That's not our message. This is to empower you to be in charge of your relationship with yourself and of your marriage, so that you're always in the driver's seat. And it's so much easier. It's hard work up front, but the payoff and the reward of this perspective, it's a game changer.
Yeah, and it actually works.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, especially when you realize you're the only person you can change,
Yeah.
and that you're responsible for your happiness. So if you change yourself and you become happy,
Yeah.
then everything around you and every aspect of your life is going to reflect that back. But when you're unhappy, your marriage in this case is reflecting back that you're the source of your unhappiness, not your marriage. So thank you so much, Karen. If you
Of
want to wrap
course.
up and
I
thank you for
will.
our listeners.
Yeah, thank you to everyone who's watching today and will watch later. If this is speaking to you, if you've been watching for a while, or if you're new to the group and you're hearing our message and like, wow, this makes so much sense, and I've been waiting for something like this, and everything I've tried hasn't worked, and I can hear the wisdom and the truth in this, and you want to learn more, and you want to dive in and gain clarity on your issues in your marriage and see if this is a good fit for you to work on yourself and be happy and bring that into your marriage, then I would love to talk to you. So you can private message me through Facebook Messenger, and we will set up a free 1-hour breakthrough video call, just meant for you to get clarity and to gain some self-awareness in a way that I promise you most likely never have. And just having that call, even if we decide it's not a good fit or you're not ready for it yet, just having that call will be one of the most valuable things that you've done for yourself in a while. So I'm available if you're ready to learn more.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you all of our listeners. We appreciate you listening today, and we're just very excited to share this novel approach to creating a healthy and happy relationship, which begins with you. So have a nice day.
Thank you,
Bye
David.
bye.
Bye.